All right, everyone. Welcome to our first podcast. This is the Blueprint Project. My name is Julian Montoya.
My name is Alvin Perez, the co-host as well.
And we are super excited to get this thing running. This is actually episode 1. And we're here with none other than Alex Narvaez. I'm going to let Alex take it from here. Alex, do your thing.
Hey, what's up, guys? My name is Alex. I am a videographer in Orlando, photographer. But I pretty much do everything and anything as far as photography and videography. But I'm excited to see where this goes, so I'm ready.
Awesome, man. We appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a busy guy and being on the show, man, so thank you. Yeah, man, so let's start with kind of, videographer. So what kind of, inspired you to get into that kind of path as a videographer,
I think just as far as, like, creating content for people, because, like, the way I look at it is when I grew up, I didn't have, like, a lot of, like, memories as far as videos. It was mainly a lot of photos. Mm-hmm. And so, like, being able to capture memories in video for people, whether it be, like, weddings or, like, sports, something like that, like, it's just cool to know that I made something for someone to appreciate.
100%, man. That's awesome.
So what you mentioned weddings and sports and stuff like that. What would you say is one of your favorite things to work on, be a part of?
Definitely like concerts.
Concerts?
Yeah, I love doing concerts.
Yeah. What do you like about it?
Just being in like that live setting, because it's the same thing, like capturing for people.
Yeah.
So like, let's say like you remember like your first concert. You're like, oh, I went, it was dope. But if you can have like a video to remember it by, you can just keep replaying it, going back and just seeing it. So,
you just mentioned concert, and I want to ask you a few questions on that. But before we do, what age kind of did you start with the whole videography? Was it a young age, or was it kind of, you were already like a little more older? Or, when did you essentially start with this idea of that you wanted to be a videographer or photographer or content creator per se?
Yeah, I would say probably like high school, senior year.
Cool.
Because I'm from Huston, from Texas.
Okay.
And I live like 5 minutes from NASA over there. So all my friends were like, their parents were like engineers or astronauts.
Yeah.
And so all high school I was taking like biotechnology, biology, all these classes, because that was the goal. Like I was going to work at NASA.
Yeah.
And I had a class my senior year to do an internship with NASA. And we had a video class in high school that I'd like been wanting to take since freshman year. And my mom was like, she calls it like a Mickey Mouse class. It's easy. Okay. She was like, no, like you're not gonna do the Mickey Mouse class. Like you need to focus on this.
Right.
And I just remember like I had tried to do the internship with NASA, and after like the first few days I was like, nah, like this isn't it. I don't want to do this. So I dropped the class and I told my mom like, hey, I want to take this video class. And so she just let me do it, and it ended up working out real well. So
awesome, man. Yeah. Awesome. That's dope that you're able to at a young age kind of see what you're passionate about, because the reality is a lot of people, society expects us to go to school, get a college degree, and do something, and then unfortunately a lot of people go through that and then they finish and they're like, hey, I actually hate this job. What the hell am I doing? So I mean, it happens all the time. So that's dope, man, that you able to find that.
One of the things that I took from that story is that your mom was like, all right, go ahead and do it. So it's hard to do your own thing, to be an entrepreneur, to start a business without the encouragement and support of others.
100%.
Exactly.
So the fact that she was able to do that for you says a lot about her and your family in that type of sense.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Definitely.
So I know we had said we had talked a little bit about the concert, but now that we're on this topic, when you did first start, what kind of were like the obstacles that you faced as far as starting off? I mean, it's there has to be some challenges, especially being so young and such a different evolving type of field. So what kind of were the challenges that you did face starting off?
Definitely, like, even though it was high school, like, of course, people don't know that much.
Right.
But there were some kids that had done it since, like, freshman year. So they knew a little more. So initially, starting off was just learning in general. Because I knew I liked to do it, but I didn't know how.
Right.
So the thing that kind of separated me from the other kids, too, back then was just staying after and, like, learning. And that's what a lot of people, like, nowadays, people are like, oh, like, you got to put in the time to put in work and, like, see the end result. And so that was like me in high school. I would take the class, and then after school we had like tutorials to like practice like learning different things, different classes. And so I would go after like 2:30, from 2:30 to 5 every day. I would go to that teacher and just like learn. Sometimes I get in trouble because my mom would be like, you got to go to tutorials for like math. Like you got to get this homework done. And I'd be in that class like learning how to edit. And
like,
so,
no, I don't want to learn math.
yeah, so it was just like putting in the work to learn. And that was just editing. During class, I would learn like the camera stuff.
Right.
But I wanted to learn how to edit to be able to put everything together.
Yeah.
So that was like the first challenge. And then the second, of course, was like the camera, because
Right.
it's expensive,
Yeah.
bro.
Yeah.
And like in high school, like I couldn't afford to do that because I was like working part-time at McDonald's, saving up to actually move here to go to school. So I did my first wedding the end of my senior year. I had a friend on the football team, and he was like, hey, my sister's getting married. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I committed.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I wasn't expecting to get paid. He was like, oh, like my mom had a budget of like 600. Is that cool? And I was like, fuck yeah, like
600?
that's
Why
cool, bro.
not?
Like I'm at high school. I'm like, bro, I work at a month for McDonald's to get that. Like, yeah. So
sure.
I did it. But then I realized, I'm like, damn, like I don't even have a camera. And so I was like, I just committed. But luckily, like I talked to that teacher, and like he was like one of the more popular football players. Like mom was in the booster club, all that shit. And so our teacher was like really bougie into that too.
Yeah.
So she knew him, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this video for him for his sister's wedding. And she was like, oh, like, do you need to borrow the cameras? And I was like, bro, like, yeah, please. So she let me take like 2 of the cameras we had to do it, and it turned out dope. So that was like kind of my first step where I was like, okay, even though I don't have everything I need,
I love that.
maybe I can still get it done with resources.
Oh, I
Even
love
like
that.
the video, I edited it in tutorials at the school, like on the computer. So
Dude, that's
it was
awesome.
the same thing, but yeah.
That's dope, man. I mean, that's a perfect example of sometimes you're not gonna have everything to get where you're not gonna have everything to get where you want to get to, but it's just like
Yeah.
having that drive, having that passion. It's like, oh shit, like I committed to this. Now, how am I
Exactly.
gonna get it done?
Yep.
Just it comes along, and I mean, that's awesome, man. That you were
Yeah,
able to
bro.
do that and get that done, even if you didn't have the resources or the tools. I mean, that's dope, bro. That's awesome.
A lot of people say that they blame the reason for not being successful is because they didn't have the resources, they didn't have
Right.
tools. But in your case, you didn't have the resources, did you? You know,
Yeah.
you didn't have a camera, but what you did have was resourcefulness,
Exactly.
which is, what
Yeah.
you did. You see, okay, I don't have it, so how do I get it?
Exactly, yeah.
And that's one of the things that's very important. And, it's just an amazing story about, like, when you want to do something, you do it. You don't find excuses why not to do it.
Exactly, yeah.
And that's just awesome, dude. So you mentioned, starting all of that and the hardest thing that you had to do, the obstacles. Well, what about now that you know a little bit more about
Yeah.
editing and camera stuff? What do you think is the hardest thing or your obstacles right now where you're at?
I would say right now, personally, time, of course. You guys know we were supposed to do this Friday.
Yeah.
But time is hard sometimes just because I juggle between work and freelancing. Kind of trying to move on to more freelancing. But I think also, like, kind of, but not too much, like competition, of course, because anybody can pick it up, learn, put in the work that I did. So it's just kind of finding small ways to separate yourself.
Yeah.
But once you kind of get that and word gets around, people find out about you, like, you're good. You start getting more things. So
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And now that you say that, that's actually the next question we had thought about was, so do you feel like this market is oversaturated? And if so, like, what can you do? You don't necessarily have to say what you do, but just what can someone start to put in their head, like, hey, what do I need to do to make myself different, to find my niche within this industry? I mean, there's other industries as well that sometimes a lot of people do it, and then what sets people apart is finding that one thing.
Exactly.
So, what advice do you give people? And, for a market like this, like you had said, that there is a lot of competition, and what
Yeah.
can you do to set yourself apart, essentially?
I would say, kind of to answer that first part, I feel like it is a bit oversaturated. Like, it's to the point now where literally anyone can do it.
Right.
Like right now, like with iPhones, things like that, the quality is so good.
Yeah.
Like you can literally have that and be good. But as far as setting yourself aside, I feel like kind of being very diverse. Like we mentioned, I do like weddings, sports, concerts, yeah, like everything, headshots. So just kind of being diverse and networking, definitely. Like people will always tell you, network.
It's important,
Because and like you meet people sometimes, and they'll do like favors for you, or they'll put your name out. Like with concerts, I got my start by even Facebook. Low key, all my jobs are kind of like Facebook, social media, because we have like a Facebook page. I went to Full Sail in Orlando, and so we have a networking page. And so one of the alumni, he used to go to there. I think he was like valedictorian for his class, and he worked at a nightclub downtown. And they did like concerts, like Young Thug, Lil Uzi, all those guys will go. And so I remember I saw a post, and he was like, hey, we're looking for an in-house photographer. And I thought that was so dope, because my mom never let me go to like concerts or anything. So my first concert, I told Julian when we used to work together, I spent $900 on tickets to see The Weeknd and Travis Scott, and that was my first concert.
That's a good one to start off.
It was. And so that was my first one, and ever since then I was like they called it the pit, but it was like right by the stage. And I was like, yo, if I could be here every time, like that would be so dope. And so that guy was like, oh, we're looking for people, but I had only taken pictures of like friends. I didn't have like a concert portfolio, so I just kind of sent him, and I was like, hey, I've never really done concerts, but I'm looking to. And he was like, okay, cool. So he looked at mine and like everybody else has submitted, and he just liked my style, like the way I edited them. And so he was like, okay, like we're gonna try you out, like can you come in tonight? And I was like, yeah, cool. So I forget his name, but it was the dude that made the song the Harlem Shake. He was like the DJ. And so I did like pictures, and it was dope. And Young Thug was actually performing the next day. And so I told him, I was like, hey, I was actually going to buy tickets, but do you think I can like do that? And he was like, oh yeah, like you're our guy now. And I was like, what? So the second concert I ever shot was Young Thug, and that was really dope too. So just like networking and meeting people. And even now he's the grounds manager at the Orlando Fairgrounds. And so they do big shows there too. They have like festivals. And so he's always telling me like, hey, come shoot this for me, come do this. And even on Facebook as well, if people are like, hey, we need a videographer, I always see the tag like JP has mentioned you in a comment, and it's like he's always throwing me. And so he's just like one of the few people that just kind of throw my name out. I was telling Julian too, a friend of mine actually sent my info to an Instagram model from New York, and she's coming into town, and she just hit me up like, hey, I'm coming from New York, do you want to shoot? I was like, yeah, cool. So it's like, just like referrals here and there. It helps, definitely. Man.
That's dope, bro. That's awesome. I know you had mentioned earlier that concerts were kind of your thing, correct? Those are more of your preference?
That's definitely,
So I did see, I was stalking a little bit on your Instagram, and I did see that you had shot for Ozuna, and you had xxxtentacion. So, how was that experience? Those are pretty big names. I mean, I don't know how early on you started recording these artists, because I know they kind of blew up pretty quick.
Yeah, definitely.
But kind of, one, how was that experience? And two, what did that make you realize, when you're actually out there, like, oh, snap, like, I'm actually recording these big name artists. How does that feel?
It's crazy, bro. Like, for instance, that was like back in 2016 when I started.
Okay.
And so that's when a lot of like Ozuna and some other people, even I always tell my friends when Lil Uzi was performing there, he was on tour. It was like him, 21 Savage, and this other dude, I think it was like YFN Lucci or something like that. But they were all together. And I remember I had heard Money Longer by Lil Uzi Vert. And then I was actually talking to 21 Savage backstage. I didn't know who he was. And like I was just talking to him because they're all back there just chilling, and I was like, oh, like this is dope, like Lil Uzi's dope, and he's like, yeah, bro, like he's dope. And then he went on stage, and I was like, oh, this guy's dope too, like. And then next thing you know, like maybe a month later, everyone's like 21 Savage, like that song X. I was like, bro, like that's the guy. Like, so like at first things like that, and then like with Ozuna too, like I didn't even realize I had shot Ozuna until like last year, because everyone was like Ozuna, and I was like, I have a picture of this dude, like. And then I realized, I was like, oh, like I asked my friend, I was like, this guy was at venue one day, and he was like, yeah, like he did like one of the Latin nights, and I was like, dang, bro, like I didn't even realize until then. But it was just dope. Like that one specific job in house, it used to be venue 578, so that's where I used to work, and just that networking with people helped blow up everything, because I would talk to like managers or even some artists afterwards. And that's actually what led to my whole story with meeting X too, is we had they do this festival here called Rare, and they had the after party at that club, and there was a producer there. It was like DJ Carnage, and he had, I guess, like a friend of his named Ronnie J, who is a producer. All his songs you hear with like, "Oh my God, Ronnie," or like something like that.
Okay.
Like that's him.
Okay.
And so I met him, and we didn't really talk that night. But the next day, I guess he saw a picture of Carnage that I posted, and he was like, "Yo, like I was there. Do you have any videos?" And I was like, "Yeah, cool." So like he was like, "Oh, like can you use this song?" And he gave me like a song, and I was like, "Yeah, cool." I chopped him up a little video, and he loved it. And then maybe like 3 months later, I was like kind of just chilling at home, and I saw one of his friends were in town, and I was like, "Yo, like you know Ronnie?" He was like, "Yeah, that's my boy." So we hung out for a bit, and then he FaceTimed Ronnie, and he was like, "Yo, like I'm hanging out with the dude that made your video. Like you should hang out with us sometime, or like let's meet up."
Oh, man.
And so
That's cool.
Ronnie, what was he doing? I hadn't talked to him in forever, but we kept in touch. And he was going on a tour with like Rob Banks and some other like South Florida guys. And so I actually went up to New York. And I kind of got myself in trouble with school too, because I was out of school, like kind of skipping to do this.
Right.
And so I went to New York, did the show. I got to meet like all those guys, Ski Master, Slump God. And so we were up there for like a week. I only did like 2 of their shows up there, I think. But I hung out up there for a week with this guy that knew Ronnie. And when we came back, he had like an Orlando, a Tampa, and a Miami show.
Okay.
And he didn't want to be like going back and forth. So I was like, "Yo, like the first show is Orlando, like just chill at my place."
Yeah.
And so I had Ronnie there at my place for probably like a good week, because there's like days in between the shows.
Yeah.
So we were just chilling, like getting to know each other. I had a big like TV mounted with the Apple TV.
Yeah.
So I would be like editing pictures on my laptop. He would have like his Mac like connected to my TV, so you could see like him making the beats right there.
Wow.
And even back then, like it was just wild,
Yeah.
because he was known, I think, then for the song he made with Denzel Curry, the Ultimate song, like the water bottle flip song. Everyone knows from that.
Yeah.
Dun 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 dun, that one.
Yeah.
So he was like big off of that, and so I was like, "Dang, this is the dude that made that. That's dope." And then everyone was talking about like this guy that was in jail, and like they kept FaceTiming and like calling him, and they were like, "Oh yeah, like X is in jail, blah blah blah." And I was like, "Oh, like who is this dude?" And then everyone started playing like "Look at Me." "Look at Me" was blowing up.
Right.
And I was like, "Dang, this is fire, like it's dope." And then you start seeing them everywhere, and I was like, "Oh, like everyone here knows this guy." And Ronnie was like, "Yeah, like I make beats for him." Like he still wasn't huge,
Right.
but like everyone knew him for "Look at Me." And so like I kept in touch with Ronnie. He came over like every now and then. I would go down to Miami. I remember we did like some studio sessions. I met a friend of his who produces for Tory Lanez.
Okay.
And so it was just like constant like studio sessions, like little video shoots, like just getting to know them. And I remember X got out of jail, and it was like hyped. Like everyone knew about it. It was on social media. And I was like, okay, like I mess with this guy. Like I want to get to know him.
Yeah.
And so he started his revenge tour. It was like the first tour he did, and it was in Houston. And at this time I actually moved back home, and I was in Houston. Like I had moved that week, and I hit up who did I hit up? I hit up this dude that works, he's the owner of Rolling Loud. His name's Tark. So
You
he's
hit up the owner of Rolling
yeah.
Loud.
And at the time
Rolling
Rolling
Loud
Loud
is crazy.
at the time Rolling Loud was like on their third or second or third year.
Okay.
So it was huge, but it wasn't like global like they are
what
now.
it is now, yeah.
And so I hit him up, and I was like, "Hey, like I was wondering if I could shoot for you guys." This is actually funny too. I'm gonna get into it. So I met X and Ski Mask. They had the same manager.
Okay.
I met their manager in New York, and I got his info, and I texted him, and I was like, "Yo, like, is it cool if we meet up? Blah blah blah. I want to shoot the show. I'm in town." And he kind of hit me up. He was like, "Yeah, like that's cool, but that's all I heard."
Yeah.
So then I DM'd Tark, because I had just hit up a friend of mine who does like media for Rolling Loud, because I had just shot it that year. So I was like, "Yo, like, is it cool if I shoot this?" He was like, "Yeah, let me message Tark and see what he has to say." So then he DM'd me, and he was like, "Yo, like, it's cool, you can pull up." And I was like, "All right, cool." So then I'm sitting at like the House of Blues in Houston just waiting, and he came and he was like, "Yo, like, what's up? How are you?" And I was like, "Oh, hey, like, I'm good." And he was like, yeah, so like you can shoot for like X, like all of them. And he actually manages Wi-Fi's funeral too.
Okay.
So he was like, yeah, like you could just shoot for all of us and like you'll be cool. And I was like, all right, dope. So I just remember like being there on stage, seeing all of that, and like just seeing the fans' reaction to X. I was like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like right behind them too, like y'all are X, and I'm like here
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
camera.
yeah.
And so it was just like being able to experience that. And that wasn't like his first shot I shot either. I shot like a bunch, bro. Like,
Was that energy? And I mean, because I've been to Rolling Loud, you know, when RIP X when he was alive, and that energy is insane.
It
when,
is,
when especially
bro.
when he, like you said, when he was first starting out, maybe he was like a year in,
Yeah.
and he had that look at me now.
Yeah.
When you're in that crowd and
Bro.
you see that open the pig, you're like, oh shit, like where do I go? People
It's
go crazy.
insane. So yeah, just like being a part of all that and like seeing him grow. I even, if you look, I don't know if you want to pop this up on a video if you post this,
Yeah.
but if you look on his question mark album, it's kind of like a collage. If you look at it real close, there's
Okay.
pictures. And so there's a picture I took of him and Ski together, and it's on like the top right corner of that album cover. And so just knowing too that like my contribution between all his content and everything
That's dope.
kind of like made it onto
Yeah,
there.
yeah, that's
Like
awesome.
I'm just like, dang, bro, like I have something that I made on that album cover. It's just crazy.
And that was you just starting, right?
Yeah, and that was like, well, at least like a year or two in. But now just continuously growing,
Yeah.
it's just like, it's crazy, bro.
Dude, that's a lot for just 2 years, man.
Yeah.
That's
But
a
that's the
lot.
same with just networking, like
It's so
meeting
important.
people, just taking steps to get places. It's
But what I'm
crazy.
getting from you is that you were never afraid to hit them up and tell them, hey, this is what I
Exactly.
do. Give me a shot type of thing, right?
Exactly,
You're not
yeah.
afraid of rejection.
Yeah, exactly.
So let me ask you this: you got a lot of yeses, but did you get a lot of nos too?
Oh yeah,
So
a lot
that's
of
important.
no's and no responses, bro.
Yeah.
I'd rather get like a no than a no response. 'Cause
Yeah, right,
then
right.
I know, like, okay, like when it's no response, it's like, could I have done that? Like,
Right,
I don't
so
know,
it's a
but
what if.
so yeah,
Yeah.
I'd much rather just get like a no. But there are a bunch, and if it's like a no, it's just a numbers game. Like you just gotta
Yes,
ask,
exactly.
and someone will say yeah.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I think that's super important. That's why I brought it up because, you know, people listening to what what you just spoke about, be like, oh damn, like this guy. You know, they probably
Yeah.
think that it was just all yes all the time, but no, that's
No,
not the
man.
case. You know, people do say no. People,
Yeah.
there is rejection, and it's important people know that because in anything that you decided to do, not just this, you're gonna face that. You know, you're gonna face the rejection, you're gonna face the no's, but it's about how bad do you want whatever it is that you want. And I mean,
Exactly.
you seem like you wanted it bad enough
Yeah.
because you know, for 2 years, man, I applaud you.
Definitely.
That's definitely admirable as hell. Like that's what's up, man. You know, that's dope. That's super dope. Yeah, but.
I want to ask you a question.
What's up?
You mentioned moving to Orlando, right? After high school.
Yeah.
You're originally from Texas, right?
Mhm.
When you came here and you saw how different it was and you noticed that you had to start from zero, right? How did you motivate yourself? What did you tell yourself to be like, okay, well, this is what I want to do,
Yeah.
and let's do it? What did you do? What was your motivation behind it all?
I kind of liked it because like when you grow up somewhere, like people get to know you for who you are there, right?
Right.
And so like as you get older, people just know like, hey, that's so and so, like they know everything about you.
Right.
And so I kind of thought about it as like, okay, no one here knows me, so I can either keep being like me or I can be me plus some. So like just add on to that.
Yeah.
And then also like I knew this is what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I was like, I'm gonna just take steps to get there.
Exactly.
So like instantly since I got here it was just like meeting new people, like constantly networking. So I never really saw it as like, oh, this is kind of scary.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, like I'm in a new place, I can do something new. Like let me just jump into it.
It's awesome that you saw it as like something good. You turned something that most people would think is like a difficult or a challenge situation. You
Yeah.
turned it into something positive
Yeah.
and used it to your
Exactly.
advantage. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so for anybody starting off right now, where you were a couple years ago,
Yeah.
what would be your best advice to have them be successful and stand out and actually make it?
I would say kind of like we just talked about, like just being persistent,
Yeah.
constantly going towards what you want to do. And it can literally relate to like anything. For like me with videography, you guys with like real estate or marketing or anything.
Yeah.
Like as long as you're persistent, like there's somebody out there that's going to want what you have to offer. So
That's awesome.
you
Yeah.
just constantly go for it.
So, we're almost wrapping up here, but so if you can go back in time, you know, knowing what you know now and you know the challenges, the adversity you face and whatnot, what would you tell, 3 years younger Alex? Hey man, do this. Like, what piece of advice? I know you said determination, focus, and that's awesome. But like, what's that one thing you like? Hey, if I would have known this from the start, oh my God, my life would have been a lot easier. Yeah. What would that thing be? Like, if you could think of one.
I would probably say just to, kind of like I just said, like be persistent. Because even like in high school, I really wasn't like super open to people. Like I talked to friends and stuff, but I wasn't like a super like go-getter.
Like an extrovert person.
Yeah, like I knew what I wanted and I made steps towards it, but I wasn't like I am now, like reaching for it. Right. I was just kind of like taking what was there. So I would say, I feel like if I would have been like that from the jump, I could have gotten maybe a little further than I am now. But I think just having that mindset from the get-go.
Stepping out of your comfort zone.
Exactly, yeah. Okay. Stepping out. So I feel like that's the easiest and hardest thing that people can do. Because once you get past the hard part, it just gets easy.
Awesome, man. I mean, did you have any other questions for Alex?
Yeah, I mean, looking at your Instagram, I see you work a lot with models.
Yeah.
Is that just a coincidence that just happened? One model hit you up, and then the other one.
Kinda,
were you looking for that?
It was actually just like doing photo shoots with friends, and then just people being like, "Hey, like let's take pictures," and I'm like, "Okay, cool." Yeah. So just like networking, meeting people, and that was the same thing. Like it used to just be like whatever came. But then it got to the point where I would reach out to people like, hey, do you want to do a shoot? Like, I see you do modeling. Do you want to build your portfolio? Yeah. Something like that. And so now it's kind of 50-50 to where I'll still reach out. Yeah. But people will still reach out to me. Yeah. So it just kind of like builds.
Yeah. Build that connection until you're the the man where people just hit you up. You don't gotta worry about it no more.
Yeah.
So man, what are some upcoming projects you have coming up? Just let the people know what you're working on, kind of what to look out for, and what you're doing.
Well, I mean, most recently, it already came out on the Food Network. It's a show called The Great Food Truck Race. I worked on an episode in Tampa, so that's out already. Something y'all could see.
Where can we find that?
I do it through the Food Network app. Okay. So yeah, because I don't have cable, I got internet. But and a lot of people don't have cable right now. But the app, you can watch that. What else coming up? Oh, big one. I worked down in Miami for about a week. They're doing a remake, if you don't know, to Bad Boys. It's Bad Boys 3. And I got to be down there with Will Smith. I worked with the stunt team. So I was down there. That comes out 2020. I don't know when, but sometime next year.
Be on the lookout.
Definitely. What else do I got? Just a bunch of like independent projects. A lot of the sports stuff has been popping off. I'm about to shoot some NFL games this year. Julian knows I've been doing like MLS, Orlando City. Yeah. I'm actually going out to Vegas next month too, to do some stuff for a NASCAR driver. So just constantly staying busy. And I like to stay busy with different things. Because when things get kind of repetitive, even with like photography sometimes, there was a point where I'm like, okay, I'm only shooting models. Like it's the same thing. Like then just having that mix to be like, today I could wake up and do this and tomorrow do that. Like it's just keeping yourself diverse. Like it never gets boring, bro.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, man. I mean, thanks for being on the show.
Of course.
This is actually our first show, so we appreciate you, taking the time. And actually, there's a lot of valuable stuff you said.
Do you want to drop your Instagram, your Twitter, Facebook?
Drop where people can find you, reach out to you and stuff. We'll link it as well, but
definitely. I usually use just like Instagram and Twitter. Okay. So that is at Pics by Alex. Okay. But there's no E, so it's Pics PICS BYALX.
Awesome. And we'll make sure we'll link it as well so you guys can see this man's art, because he's definitely talented, man. For sure. For sure. But man, thank you so much.
Of course.
Definitely best of luck to you and everything. I know for a fact, if I know somebody that needs a videographer, you're my guy. So I definitely send them your way, man. But thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.